afternoon to all our listeners and viewers of the NDC Heartbeat podcast. We're happy to welcome all those who are listening on radio via WeFM, Vibes FM, Spice Capital Radio. We've got 100.5 FM out of Labby in Grenville. And we also have Ride Along out of Brooklyn, New York. And of course, we invite you to join our online platform, the NDC Heartbeat. Also, we are on YouTube, so you have many options. Well, for today's program, what we're going to be doing is to share with you a very gripping and inspiring interview which the Honorable Dickon Mitchell held in Bermuda. That was on his way back from the COP meeting. Now, the interview was held on Radio 102.7 FM in Bermuda. As you know, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, he's also chairman of CARICOM, and he was interviewed by well-known educator, writer, and director of many plays, Dr. Shangri-La Durham Thompson. This interview was so very inspiring. Our information is that it touched the people of Bermuda very deeply. The interview was held under the theme, The Need to Lead. Don't miss that interview. It really was very touching. However, as a build-up to that interview yesterday morning, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell was also invited to be the keynote speaker at the Bermuda Progressive Labour Party Gala, which is the signal of the final event for the annual General Conference. And that was held last night under the theme, and I quote, The Power of One, which encourage active participation, unity, and it's intended to recognize individuals and help shape the future of Bermuda. So we now invite you to listen to our Prime Minister and Chairman of CARICOM, Dickon Amos Mitchell. Please join the Honorable Andy Williams at a town hall meeting scheduled this afternoon at the Springs playing field. It's a town hall meeting this afternoon, starts at 5 p.m. at Springs playing field. The people of the South, Great South, you're invited to come on out and all surrounding areas. Please join us at the Springs playing field this afternoon, 5 p.m. It's a town hall meeting held by the Honorable Andy Williams.
The NDC Women's Arm invites you to our annual dinner on Friday, November the 29th at the Trade Center Annex. Enjoy an unforgettable evening with a glass of wine, live band entertainment, and a chance to win special door prizes. Tickets are just $150 for singles and $250 for couples, with proceeds supporting hurricane relief and the WASH program. Tickets can be purchased from the constituency branches or simply contact Heather on St. John Street at 415-4763. Don't miss out on this special event. For more information, call 403-7701 or 449-5872. And here's the exciting part. The top ticket seller will have the honor of dancing with the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Get your tickets today from the constituency branches or call Heather at 415-4763. See you there. Celebrate the season with us. Join MP Andy Williams and the community at the NDC South St. George Christmas dinner and dance for an evening of festive cheer, delicious food and live music. It's happening on Saturday, December 14th, 2024 at the Point Salines Hotel from 6:30 p.m. to 2 a.m. There'll be welcome drinks on arrival, a 3-course buffet dinner from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Be entertained by the live band Loyalty from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Tickets are singles $200, couples $375, dance-only tickets $50. Get your tickets from Andy's Soup House in Woodlands. Call 418-1600 or the computer store in Spiceland Mall. Call 444-3655 or contact 555-8867 or 414-4429. Secure your spot and celebrate with us.
See you at the Aficionados Hideaway Rooftop New Year's Eve for Flash, the premium all-inclusive old years to New Year's celebration. A unique experience with superior fireworks displays at midnight. Hosted by Patrick the Hype Man, alongside DJ Kingpin, DJ Kareem, and Selecta Snappy. Admission regular tickets $500, or better still, enjoy premium ultra VIP lounge for $650 with Prosecco available all night long. Tickets available from Grenadian Optical and Go To Fet. December 31st, Old Year's Night, the Aficionados Hideaway Rooftop, all inclusive, with fireworks at midnight as we greet and say hello to 2025.
Get ready to dance the night away at the National Democratic Congress, New York chapter's highly anticipated White Christmas Dance on December 7th. Join us at the stunning Caribe Banquet Hall located on 1963 Utica Avenue for an unforgettable evening filled with your favorite Caribbean beats, joy, and a sense of community. This all-inclusive event is set to be the highlight of the holiday season, featuring two of the hottest DJs in town. Get ready for an epic showdown as the seasoned veteran Dr. Wax goes head-to-head with the smooth and stylish One Drop. But that's not all. Expect exciting attractions and surprises throughout the evening, along with a mouth-watering selection of exquisite Caribbean food and drinks to keep your spirits high. Tickets are $75, covering everything you need for an amazing night out. Whether you're celebrating with friends, making new connections, or simply enjoying a festive evening, the chapter's White Christmas Dance is the perfect way to celebrate the season. Don't miss this chance to celebrate the holidays with the NDC family. Purchase your tickets today and help us create a night to remember. Get your tickets now by visiting www.ndcnewyorkchapter.com or call 347-729-5770 or 347-693-6880. See you there.
Today we have a leader, a man who is leading Grenada, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell. Now, Mr. Dickon Amos, I pronounce it right? Yes, Amos Thomas Mitchell is a Grenadian politician and attorney. In 2021, he was elected leader of the National Democratic Congress and has been serving as Prime Minister of Grenada since June 2022. A man of humble beginnings, Dickon Mitchell's story is one of success forged from hard work, determination, and a deep desire for the betterment of his country. He was born in 1977, so when I saw that picture, I said, he reminds me of our minister, our premier, rather. A little bit about, looks a little bit like him, in my opinion. Now, he was born in St. David Parish in Grenada, and in 1996 he began his service as a teacher at his alma mater, the Presentation Brothers College, and this 2-year stint allowed him to appreciate the full spectrum of the educational experience and cemented his desire to do more by advocating for the educational advancement of all Grenadians. Now, in 1998, he enrolled at the University of the West Indies in pursuit of a law degree, and after completing U Wooding Law School in Trinidad, his commitment to serve Grenada took him straight home, where he commenced his law practice at Grant, Joseph and Company, and he immediately distinguished himself as a formidable lawyer, representing many individuals and business entities. And 3 years later, he acquired Grant, Joseph and Company. In 2016, Dickon Mitchell opened another law firm, Mitchell and Company, and this was a maneuver strongly influenced by his desire to create more employment for young and upcoming lawyers. Dickon Mitchell's collective experiences as a teacher, a mentor, lawyer, a youth advocate shaped his commitment to Grenada and motivated his desire to enter the political arena. And on June 23rd, 2022, only 8 months into his political career, he led his party to victory, and he was sworn in on the 24th of June 2022, becoming Grenada's 9th prime minister. His National Democratic Congress won the 2022 general election with slightly over 51% of the popular vote and secured 9 out of the 15 available seats. He reacted to the election victory by announcing that he would ask the Governor General to declare June 24th a public holiday, a national public or bank holiday, so that citizens could celebrate the Liberation Day and the victory. He also pledged to end nepotism and reform the electoral system. He took the additional portfolio of Minister of Finance and created a new ministry called the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation. And during his speech at the swearing in of minister ceremony, he promised, I like this, to pay teachers their withheld salaries. Now, I'm a former teacher, so. Mr. Dickon Mitchell supports Grenada's becoming a republic, and he says he hopes to see his country become one during his administration. As Prime Minister, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell is working with his cabinet of ministers to move Grenada forward, building the foundation for an equitable society that takes pride in its culture, heritage, and identity. So this morning we are very privileged to have with us the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada. Now, I had to go and do a little bit of research, right? I don't know that much about Grenada. I've never been there. So we're going to learn, and the listening audience, a little bit more about your country and the country that you are leading as a servant leader, and about a little more about you personally. So first of all, why don't you tell us what it was growing up in Grenada?
Well, good morning, and first of all, let me express my great appreciation for being with you this morning. Thank you for the invitation to join you and your many listeners. I've been warmly welcomed into Bermuda, and I want to say thank you to the Premier of Bermuda for giving me this invitation to attend the gala this evening, at which I'll be the feature speaker. So it is because of this invitation that I'm here, so I truly do appreciate it, and I look forward to coming back. It's a short trip, but from what I've seen already and from the various persons I've met, your hospitality is amazing, and I look forward to coming back and share a bit more of that. To answer your question, I grew up in a home that was dominated by women. I grew up with my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, my brothers and sisters, and my cousins. We were a humble home. In fact, for the first 10 or 11 years of my life, we had no electricity or even running water. So when we said it was humble, it was humble. But I was surrounded with love, affection, hard work, and a deep sense of family. I think we all looked out for each other, not just within my home, but within the community that I grew up to. So I walked to primary school, walked back home for lunch, and would walk back to school in the afternoon. On the way from school, we would go to the playing field, play football, cricket, engage in a lot of sport. Grenada at the time was also a heavily agricultural society, and so almost every household, one way or the other, had a backyard garden or survived from farms. We were known as the Isle of Spice, so you have a lot of spices, nutmeg, cocoa, cinnamon. The list goes on, and so obviously the production of spice was a major economic activity. So almost every home, one way or the other, was involved in this. And as a young child, you actually went to the farm with your parents or grandparents or brothers and sisters and siblings. So a couple of things to life. But in sum total, it was always a happy childhood. And whatever we lacked materially, I think we made up for in community spirit and in a deep sense of happiness.
When you say you walked to school, because I went to some country where children walk to school, but they walk for miles and miles and miles. So when you walk to school, was it just around the corner?
Well, it wasn't. No, it was probably, I would say, in my case, no more than half a mile. Luckily for us, by then, certainly the primary school system, you had schools which were located in most villages, and I would say you probably wouldn't have to walk for more than a mile in most instances to get to the primary school. So by then we were quite fortunate with that.
Well, that's still a long way for me, because if you walk home for lunch and then you're talking about miles in a day. So discuss with us then your educational journey.
Sure. So the primary school was known as St. David's Roman Catholic School, and it essentially was a school run by the Catholic Church with support by the government. And when I went into high school as well, it's similar. It's Presentation Brothers College. It was run by a brotherhood of Irish brothers who also focus heavily on Catholic upbringing, but again supported by the state. And to some extent, education in Grenada has largely been, and it goes way back from post-emancipation. Almost all of the schools were actually schools founded by various Christian sects, so whether it's Methodist, Pentecostal, Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic, Anglican, you'd find a lot of our schools bear the hallmark of either Roman Catholic or an Anglican or Presbyterian or Methodist or Seventh-day Adventist schools. So the churches played a significant historical role, particularly at primary school, in shaping education in Grenada. And as Grenada became a post-independent society, the government then stepped in more to supplement and support the education system. So what we have in Grenada is really a hybrid system where you have a few government-only schools that are essentially built and run by government, but the vast majority of our schools, and particularly some of what I may call the more elite or successful ones, just simply based on longevity, are in fact schools that are still managed to a large extent by the various religious sectors, and then they're supported by the government. So that is sort of the structure of the education system at primary and secondary school. But the focus was heavily academic, very rigorous. High standards were expected, both in terms of academic performance as well as in terms of behavioral and personality development. So, attention to detail, tidiness, cleanliness, punctuality, respect for those in authority. All of those were some of the values that were engendered in us. But also physical exercise, because as I said, sport was always something that Grenadians were always big on, and the education system reinforced that. So, for instance, we have what is called the Intercollegiate Athletic Championship. That is probably one of the single biggest events in Grenada, where all of the high schools compete against each other in track over 2.5 days. And, that is such a feature of education that long after you leave your school, every year you go back to that event to support your school. And for many of us, it's an opportunity to reminisce, because we dress up in our old school uniform and we go chanting and supporting our school. And so the rivalry, it's fierce, but it's also friendly. And, it breeds into people a sense of accomplishment as well, because we've since gone on to produce Olympic gold athletes coming out of that very system of competition. So it's not just, in a sense, the academic competition, but the competition that you face in life. Our education system has taught that as well. So having gone through primary school, we had what was called the common entrance exams at the time, which is your exit exams to go into secondary school. And then obviously when you get to Form 5, we do what is called the Caribbean Examination Council exams, where you exit, and then in those days you go on to do A-levels, which is the British A-level system. So pretty much that was my journey. After leaving high school, I went into our lone tertiary level education called the T. Marisho Community College. It's named after Theophilus Albert Marisho, who's a famous Grenadian politician and activist who advocated for regional unity coming out of the post-independence era. And there I would have done my A-levels. Having completed my A-levels, I went back to Presentation Brothers College, my alma mater, and I taught for 2 years. But while doing so, I had already enrolled at the University of the West Indies Cable campus. And so I began studying law even while I was teaching at Presentation College. At the time, we had what was called the Distance Challenge Program, and it was a challenge because trying to do university, not at the university itself, while at the same time having a full-time job, was quite a challenge. But I managed to survive, and then I, after the end of the 2-year stint of teaching, I went to Barbados to complete my first degree in law, and then thereafter I journeyed to the Hugh Wooding Law School in Trinidad and Tobago, did a legal education certificate, and finished in 2002, and then I went back to Grenada and began to practice law.
Wow. Well, that eliminates my next question about changing from being a school teacher, because you knew from the beginning what you wanted to do.
Yes.
And teaching was just an avenue to help you to get there.
It was, but it was also a very unique experience, because, up until that time, you experienced education purely from the perspective of the student.
Right.
And so when with no experience, having been a student all your life, you're now faced with the reality of having to stand on the other side of the desk, so to speak. It obviously gives you the perspectives about how students see you and what are the things you need to address to be able to be effective at teaching, and I would say specifically at communicating, because I think to a large extent that is really what I think teaching is about. How do you communicate with another group of people to make sure that they get the things that you think you are saying? and how do you put yourself in their position so that some of the challenges that they're experiencing, that you can address it to help them. In essence, there's the students, but there's also the administrative part. You've got to deal with the Ministry of Education. You've got to, which I'll be honest, I didn't quite enjoy.
Right.
But the teaching part of it and the interaction with the students was quite phenomenal.
Well, that's great. If you're just joining us, you're listening to The Need to Lead, and we are talking to the Prime Minister of Grenada, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, and he's giving us some information about Grenada. Some of you in the listening audience may have visited Grenada already, and I've just from hearing the things that he said about education and Grenada as a society, we can see some similarities between Grenada and Bermuda. So we're glad that you're feeling very welcomed here, and we're going to be asking you some interesting questions for me, because I'd like to know how Prime Minister. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's interesting because, when I returned to Grenada in 2002, 2 years later we had a very devastating hurricane, Hurricane Ivan. It completely destroyed the island, over 200% of our GDP, housing stock completely devastated, our churches all demolished, schools, agriculture, tourism, complete and utter devastation. And we had not been hit by any major hurricane since 1955. So that was a major shocker for the population. And to some extent, we still bear the scars of that hurricane 20 years later on. So when I went back to Grenada, to be honest, I think my initial thinking was that I'm a lawyer. I'm going to serve my country for 2 years. I'm going to ensure, because when you go to the University of the West Indies, there's a bond which requires you to come back to your country and serve for 2 years. And so my thinking was, I'm about economic advancement and empowerment. I'm going to serve for 2 years, and I'm going to see if there are opportunities elsewhere outside of Grenada. And to be honest, after the hurricane, I never thought of leaving Grenada again, because for me, I think I recognized that we needed people to stay and help build the country back. And in a sense, particularly in the private sector as well. And so I stayed, and in a very short space of time, I was able to acquire the law firm that I was in. And I invited 2 of my colleagues who were friends. They joined me, and we stayed at that firm until 2016. But in 2016, I wanted to go on a different journey. And I really wanted the opportunity, I think, to be more supportive of young lawyers in particular. And in a sense, that decision, I think, has allowed me to essentially be where I am today, because I left my firm that I acquired in 2016, formed a new firm in 2017, and that allowed me to actually hire lawyers. So right now, the firm has 4 lawyers. But it also gave me the opportunity to be able to if I wanted to be able to leave the firm in the hands of young, capable people and embark upon a completely different journey. So when COVID hit in 2019, 2020, it was the first time, I think, for an extended period of time where I had not left Grenada. Because as a lawyer, you're working, you're busy, you're traveling, that sort of thing. And I think, in a sense, it forced me to really pay attention to how decisions are made, the level of consultation or lack thereof with the public, and understanding of how policy impacts the average citizen. And we knew that for sure COVID was something unique. We'd never experienced it before. But as we went on, I felt the government's approach to the citizens was high-handed, arbitrary, and oftentimes seemed to have no empathy for what people were going through. So we had, for example, no movement weekends, where no one could leave their home for the entire weekend. Now, if I felt this was a policy that would actually accomplish what it was seeking to do, which presumably is to stop the spread of COVID,
Right.
You'd say fine. But clearly it was not, because if 2 days later you'd let the public, you'd open up completely and people could then do what they want. There's no way such a policy would work. But what was critical about these things is that you have senior citizens, you have persons with disabilities. If someone can't attend to them, or bring food for them, or care for them, or help pay them or clean them, then how is this supportive of a caring sort of community? And then you had a situation where obviously schools were closed for a very long period of time. We were not yet at the point where all schools had access to internet, or children had access to tablets, or even internet at their home. So even if you were doing a bit of remote learning, you're talking vast majority of the students were not being educated. And so, in a sense, my first involvement was really at the school level to just try and see how we can sort of talk some sense into some of the policies. In my case, I had 2 kids, and I was very concerned that they were being robbed of the opportunity to socialize, to interact, to make friends, because to me, outside of the academic education, that's one of the pivotal things about education. And that sort of mushroomed into just having more and more conversations with people across the spectrum as to how can we help to influence better decision making in the country. And after some extensive discussions, mostly via Zoom, quite a few of us said, you can come up with fancy ideas, but if at a political level there isn't buying, and if people are not interested in it, with a stroke of a pen, they can kill almost any idea you had. And so that led a few of us thinking, well, maybe we should consider whether it's time for political involvement. Now, once that happened, the crowd went from 50 or 60 people to about 3 or 4. Because obviously,
right.
Once you're dealing with politics, everyone shies away.
Right.
But there was a friend of mine who kind of said, after we surveyed the political landscape, that he was going to join one of the political parties. And then we said to him, look, we'll support you because we think it's fair, having come through this process of how can we help, that if one person is prepared to take that leap of faith, then some of us should support him. So the initial thinking was that we would simply go in to support this friend of mine. And pretty much that was it, because once we made that decision and we started going in, it became clear to us, and that's why we ended up joining the National Democratic Congress. Now, to some extent, there are some parallels between the Progressive Labour Party here and the National Democratic Congress, in that the party had spent a significant portion of its time in opposition. Mm-hmm. And in the last 2 elections, it had not won a single seat in Parliament. So our electoral record, to be honest, was not impressive. But what was impressive, I think, for me, was that the party stood for principle. There were some unshakable values: good governance, transparency, against corruption. And those things mattered for us. And it was also democratic. Despite the challenges, it had clearly gone through processes of leadership changes, sometimes not always in the healthiest of ways, but it showed a willingness to take on new people, to change, and to always remain, I think, rooted in supporting the working class of the country. So when we surveyed the landscape, it was a deliberate choice for us to say we are going to join this organization despite its poor electoral record, because we felt there were certain foundational principles that it stood for. And so eventually we joined. We started doing work. Again, I was thinking at the time I would do fundraising. I'd help support initiatives to support the party organs. But in the space of, so I joined in the summer of 2021. And when we joined, we recognized that there was a convention coming. And a number of people started asking, so, you people are simply not going to put your hands up to take part in the convention and to offer to serve on the executive. And we were like, we didn't think we were quite ready for this. We just joined 2 months ago. We were doing work, and we felt, that we still needed a lot of growing up to do, so to speak, politically. But there was a overwhelming sense that people were looking for new leadership, that we should not walk away from the opportunity. And what was critical as well is that a few of the colleagues who had joined with me and who had encouraged to join sort of told me, matter of fact, that if I did not step up, so to speak, that they may not step up also, and that they would remain in the background. So I recognize that, in a sense, they were right, that if you were going to ask people to serve, you also should be prepared to serve and be prepared to make the sacrifices. So I stared at myself in the mirror. I asked myself the hard question, and then I decided to put my hand up. And interestingly, one of the biggest issues was the question of leadership within the party. And quite a few folks started asking me whether I had not considered it. And again, after thinking it through, I decided I was going to put myself up for the leadership. I spent a lot of time speaking with everyone in the party, speaking with delegates. And it's a lot of much older persons than me. Right. So it meant I had to convince them to take a chance, so to speak, on this young boy. And as politics go, as soon as you get into politics, people say all kinds of things about you, most of which are not true. So you also have to contend with that. But in the end, what was clear to me was that I knew who I was, I knew what I was about, and therefore I didn't have to pretend to be someone that I was not. I didn't have to speak in a manner that I would not ordinarily speak. I didn't have to behave in a manner that I would not ordinarily behave. So I guess my comfort with people, my ability to speak to every and anyone, helped me. So I simply went straight to the party base. I laid bare who I was, and I said it's an opportunity to serve. Whether or not you support me, I will continue serving, because I recognize this is going to be a long-term, medium to long-term project, so to speak. And it was first about building the image of the party, strengthening the institutions of the party, and giving the public the sense that there is a real alternative. Because I think in the past, when we lost, it was because the party felt there was infighting, disunity, and even though they liked a lot of the principles, they were not confident they could trust us. With power, because we've had some bad experiences where when power was given to the party, there was so much disunity and infighting that the government collapsed. So I said to the members of the party, you have an opportunity to take a chance. I have no experience politically, but I can assure you of the things I would do. And one of the things I committed to do was to become a full-time politician. I said to them I would leave my law firm and dedicate all of my time to this, because I didn't think we could be successful if I was a part-time politician and a part-time lawyer. And so again, it goes back to the question of things working out. Had I not made the decision to form a second law firm and to empower young people so that I felt confident that I could walk away and give them the opportunity to continue running the firm, then I would not have the confidence to offer myself full-time as a politician. And so that was basically in a sense, my argument to the party. And on the day of the convention, there were two other contenders, so it was three of us, and I won pretty much overwhelmingly. I think I got 277 of the delegates' votes, and the next person got 44.
Oh my goodness!
And
definitely.
So on the 31st of October, between the summer and essentially the autumn, I had gone from a complete private, unknown individual to becoming the political leader of the National Democratic Congress. And my life has never been the same since.
Well, I have a myriad of questions, and I look at you, and the first thing that Dawn Simmons sent me was your picture, right? And I looked at your picture, and then I said, he looks so young. And then I looked at who you took over from, Dr. Mitchell, of no relationship.
Yes.
But can you give us an idea of what it was like taking over from him, and what were the differences between you and your goals for the country?
Well, I think, Dr. Mitchell came into politics, he came into politics really in a successful way since in 1984. If you know the history of Grenada, between 1979 and 1983, we had a socialist revolutionary government. In 1979, there was a coup led by Maurice Bishop and Bernard Code and the PRG government, which overthrew Sir Eric Matthew Gary, who was the first prime minister, and prior to that, our premier, and who led us into independence. And that happened in 1979. It was a very popular revolutionary government. Maurice Bishop was a well-known regional and international, in a sense, Pan-African, Pan-Caribbean leader, very, very popular, a brilliant orator. And so he inspired the country. And there was significant movement in terms of education, women's empowerment, treating the working class, making education free and accessible to everyone. But the challenge with this was that they took power not through the democratic means, and they never held elections. And they quickly, between ideology and personality disputes, they became disunited. And it led to a tragic situation where Maurice and members of the cabinet were actually executed on October 19th, 1983. So it still is one of the darkest and heaviest moments in our political and socio-economic history. So when the government collapsed, the United States, together with regional forces, intervened in Grenada on the 25th of October and essentially invaded the country. There was some fighting between the Cuban supporters who were helping us build our airport at the time and some of the local military forces in Grenada against the Americans. But obviously they could not stand up to the might of the US and the Caribbean forces. And so that period ended, and between 1983 and 1984, with the help of regional support, we moved back to a constitutional democratic system of government based on the Westminster model, and elections were held in 1984. And essentially the Americans brought together all of the contending factions, political factions, and more or less created one political party called the New National Party, partly because I think they were concerned that the Grenada United Labour Party, which Sir Eric Gary led, and which in a sense their excesses created the PRG government, which overthrew them. I think they were concerned that if they didn't bring all of the splinters together, that the GLP would come back into office, and then you'd probably still have some of that counter action and counteraction between old foes. And so the NNP was created, and they won the elections 14-1. And Dr. Mitchell was one of the members of parliament then, and he's held uninterrupted parliamentary membership since 1984 to current. And certainly by the early 90s, he became the most formidable political force in the country, and he's dominated politics since then. And so he's been prime minister for 23 years. He's been leader of his party almost uninterrupted for probably as much as 30, if not more years. And he's been a member of parliament, as I said, for essentially, this year makes it 40 years. December will make it 40 years since he's been a member of parliament. So that's sort of what I was going up against when the elections were called in May of 2022. So there's no question that he's obviously a very successful politician, very successful MP. He's been, as I said, Prime Minister for at least 23 years, and so very experienced. But for me, I didn't really see it as a competition between myself and Dr. Mitchell. What I saw this was as really generational change in the political landscape. I'm younger by him by at least 30 years.
Yeah, I saw it.
You know, we both went to the same secondary school. When I was teaching, his son was at the secondary school, so I taught his son. My son just graduated from that same secondary school. Okay. So that's the sort of generation gap we're looking at. So for me, I think it was important for me to not spend my time criticizing Dr. Mitchell. I view it as he had an opportunity to serve. He served for a very long time, and that I would view it as him having given off his best. And so I positioned myself as an opportunity for someone else to serve, for someone to offer an alternative to the public, and to say what we are about and what we want to achieve and where we think the country should go, and to give the public the opportunity to choose. If they chose Dr. Mitchell still, then I would simply go back and say either our message didn't resonate or we did not communicate our message effectively enough, and look at that and see how we can do it better the next time. So that was really how we positioned our campaign. So a lot of what we did was really spend time talking about who we are, because the public still didn't know us, what we stand for, why we want to serve, because Grenada's made me. Everything that I am really comes from the education system, really comes from the upbringing that I got in Grenada. And so I felt it was important to say to young Grenadians in particular, don't despair, that there is an opportunity for you if you do certain things, if you educate yourself, if you work hard, if you have the right values, because look at me. So that's really how we campaign. We try to stay positive. I mean, in politics, people like Dickon, they like the back and forth, but we wanted to do it in a manner that was funny and uplifting, rather than one where you're attacking and being negative or engaging in mudslinging against persons purely for political grandstanding. So for us, that's the approach we took, and we think it worked well because it was refreshing. Obviously, we used a lot of social media. I think that was one of our advantages, being younger. But crucially, we campaigned, I think, for the first time, perhaps since the period of the PRG, in a style where we had a lot of town hall meetings, a lot of village meetings, a lot of pocket meetings where we campaigned directly with the people. And we gave them the opportunity to take the mic. Most times our presentations never went beyond 15 minutes. I would speak 10, 15 minutes and I will hand the mic to the public and say, ask me anything. Let me hear your views, let me hear your comments, criticize whatever we're saying, because that way we would be able to get a real sense of what the public wants. And I think that resonated with the public a lot, because it means we were not hiding. We were not just having big mass rallies where there's a lot of entertainment and speeches and no real interaction with the public. So, a lot of it really, I think that made a difference, because people were able to see us, touch us, feel us, and to sense whether we were authentic or not. So that is kind of how we were able, I think, in the end to pull it off.
Well, you have emphasized what Brent McHugh talks about, the Forbes council member, when he talks about leadership empowering others to accomplish. One of the things that struck me in your speech, acceptance speech, I guess that's what you call it, but you talked about the elimination of nepotism, and I'd like you to elaborate a little bit about that. You talked about awarding contracts not based on party or personal loyalty, that there would be merit in job selection, and in terms of whatever opportunities were going to be available, they had to be gained by merit,
yes,
rather than nepotism. And that seemed to be something that you seem to be very, very strong about. So tell us a little bit about that, and why did you take that stance?
Right. Well, I took that stance because, one of the challenges with a small country is that if you operate politics based on what I call reprisals and patronage, what is going to happen is that the country is going to benefit at best from only half of its talent at all times. And when that happens, the country is not going to progress at the rate it should be, and oftentimes it may in fact be retarding. Because what you're doing is that you are giving people opportunities and jobs not based on whether they're competent or whether they have the ability to do it, but based on merely because they've supported you politically. And I'm not saying that political support is not a factor, but it ought not to be the decisive factor, particularly when we are talking about major government contracts or major government initiatives that is meant to benefit the entire community and the entire society. And historically, I think what we saw with the opposition was that, to a large extent, not only were contracts awarded purely based on political loyalty, oftentimes in an attempt to ensure that they then got a kickback, but in many instances, people who were competent, capable, and sometimes who were prepared to volunteer their time, who didn't want any money, were sidelined, or prevent it from contributing to the growth and development of the country. And so what it led to is a situation where you'd have significant stagnation or lack of capacity, or the people with capacity eventually leave because you frustrate them out of the country, and therefore the country is not going to grow and develop to its true potential. And to some extent we are suffering with the consequences of this, because it leads to brain drain, oftentimes just out of sheer frustration. It leads to disinterest when people were prepared to volunteer, for example, the offers are not taken up on simply because you are concerned about whether they are loyal to you or whether they will criticize a policy position that they disagree with. So for me, it was important to say to the public that our style of governance was going to be different, that we were going to try and govern for the majority, because after all, we had won, and that clearly meant the majority of people were supporting our policies. And so we could not turn around and begin to start saying, okay, this one is an opposition supporter, so they can't get a contract, or you shouldn't award them a contract. And I'm not naive that that sort of political culture, when it's been sown for a long period of time, is going to be difficult to uproot or to get rid of. But I'm equally aware of the consequences of that kind of culture and what it does to the society, because it divides people. You become very tribal, and the sort of wholesome growth that you want for the country does not occur. And so that is why very early we signal this. And I will say it's not because I'm not under political pressure. When your party has been out of office for a very long time, make no mistake, your supporters want to ensure that, in a sense, they get their fair share. Right. And I'll also be honest, some of them also feel that they've been treated badly by the opposition. And so sometimes there's a great fervor for you to engage in the reprisals. But you have to ask yourself, is that the Christian way? Is that going to lead to distinguishing yourself from the others? If you go back and do the same thing that they've done, you're basically telling the public that you know different, and that you're a hypocrite because you were criticizing it, and now it's your turn, you're engaging in the same way. So it's not without political pressure. There's always going to be that political pressure. But I think, if you are going to lead and distinguish yourself, you have to say, what makes me different? What am I going to do different? And what are the principles that is going to undergird or policy positions? And I've said repeatedly to the public, if we engage in the politics of patronage and reprisals, the country will go nowhere. Right? And it's not something that I would support. So yes, if both persons are equally qualified, equally experienced and talented, and then you perhaps have to make a final decision, and you say, okay, well, I will give the one who's supporting me, I have no difficulty with that sort of decision making. But if you are going to have someone who's more experienced, better talent, better capacity, and you're not going to give them the contract simply because in your mind you think they don't support you, then I obviously would not endorse or support that type of policy, because in a sense you are punishing people who are successful simply because you believe, and oftentimes you don't know for sure that they're not supporting you, especially when you've won. So the empirical data says the majority of the people support you, and therefore you should be acting in the best interest of the majority.
So I'm interested, because I look at you and I see a young man, right? And I did listen to your speech. One of your speeches, you talked about coming with fresh ideas, with empowering young people, right? And then I looked at the aging population of Grenada, which Bermuda has an aging population of about 33%, right? And your aging population is significantly smaller. And I'm not sure what the rationale is for that. But how do you engage older people, or are you, when you talk about fresh ideas and new ideas, does this eliminate to some extent those who have gone before?
No, to the contrary, because I would always we can't always assume fresh or new ideas come from the young people. Right. Okay. That's the first thing. And second, even if you have fresh ideas or new ideas, you have to temper that with wisdom. And you have to temper that with experience. And I think for me, critically, that's one of the things. And I use the PRG as a good example. The leadership was very young. Prime Minister Maurice Bishop became Prime Minister at 33 years old. I think he died at 37. Right. So when he died, and when I became Prime Minister, I was almost 10 years older than him, even though I may not look it. And one of the things I said that in my own analysis of the PRG period, I think because they did not have older persons, or a lot more older persons in the leadership, or in a position of being able to counsel them or provide advice, that when it came to the personality issues or the ideology issues, they were not able to get them to calm down and to recognize that you have to think of the big picture and not just your own personal advancement in terms of career or power. Think of what the consequences will be to you, your family, and to the nation if you're not able to resolve your conflicts. So for me, one of the crucial things is ensuring that we have senior citizens, people with experience, who are able to say to us, I've been down this road before. You need to calm down. You need to put this. You need to put this aside. This may sound like a great idea, but you haven't really thought it through. You haven't looked properly at the pros and cons, and perhaps you need to go back and ask yourself whether this would work or not. And so I'll give a good example. I go back to the PRG. I think one of the things the PRG underestimated was Grenadians' spirituality. Right, so there were certain doctrines that I think they were trying to introduce, which there's no question in my mind that the public firmly rejected, and misappreciated the fact that Grenadians love their church. They like going to church. They're very spiritual, and this is not something you want to interfere with. And that's why you have, in a sense, the separation of state and church, because people's spirituality, their religion, is really a personal choice, and by extension, a community choice for them. It's not a choice for the state, and that requires sometimes senior citizens to point that out to you. Because as a young person, you may be hot and sweaty and you think you know it all, and
yes.
Science matters more than everything else and that sort of thing, but spirituality also matters. And it's a lesson for me that I've learned, that you don't interfere with people's religion. Right? And again, that comes from some experience, some wisdom, and having I think senior citizens around you to help guide. And then finally, I think for us, we have to have balance, because all of us will get, hopefully, if we're lucky enough, to become a senior citizen. And so you have to think about, how do you treat your senior citizens and what will happen to you, right? And if you don't lead by example, and that's one of the things I talk a lot about. When people have worked hard to build a community and to build a society, we have to show that appreciation and that gratitude to them by the way in which we treat them, the social amenities we provide for them, the help and support we provide for them, because if not, our turn is coming as well. Right?
That's right.
And so what goes around comes around. So for us, having that balance is critical. But at the same time, obviously, we also know that there's good experience, there's bad experience, and you also do need sometimes some disruption to create the type of change, hopefully positive change, that you want. So in that sense, it's balancing new ideas and fresh ideas with true, tried and tested ideas that have worked.
You are fascinating. You are absolutely fascinating. If you're just joining us, you're listening to The Need to Lead on Magic 102.7, and we are talking to the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, who is the Prime Minister of Grenada. And our topic this morning deals with empowering others, leadership, empowering others to accomplish. And so I have so many questions. We have so little time, but if you're willing to continue for a while, I don't know what your timeline is like. I see all these important people out there.
Well, they'll tell me when I have to leave.
No. You stay right there. This is Walter Robin, the Honorable.
We now take a short break and back with you in a moment. Please join the Honorable Andy Williams at a town hall meeting scheduled this afternoon at the Springs playing field. It's a town hall meeting this afternoon, starts at 5 p.m. at Springs playing field. The people of the South, Great South, you're invited to come on out, and all surrounding areas. Please join us at the Springs playing field this afternoon, 5 p.m. It's a town hall meeting held by the Honorable Andy Williams.
The NDC Women's Arm invites you to our annual dinner on Friday, November the 29th at the Trade Center Annex. Enjoy an unforgettable evening with a glass of wine, live band entertainment, and a chance to win special door prizes. Tickets are just $150 for singles and $250 for couples, with proceeds supporting hurricane relief and the WASH program. Tickets can be purchased from the constituency branches or simply contact Heather on St. John Street at 415-4763. Don't miss out on this special event. For more information, call 403-7701 or 449-5872. And here's the exciting part. The top ticket seller will have the honor of dancing with the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Get your tickets today from the constituency branches or call Heather at 415-4763. See you there. Celebrate the season with us. Join MP Andy Williams and the community at the NDC South St. George Christmas dinner and dance for an evening of festive cheer, delicious food and live music. It's happening on Saturday, December 14th, 2024 at the Point Salines Hotel. from 6:30 p.m. to 2 a.m. There'll be welcome drinks on arrival, a 3-course buffet dinner from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Be entertained by the live band Loyalty from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Tickets are singles $200, couples $375, dance-only tickets $50. Get your tickets from Andy's Soup House in Woodlands. Call 418-1600 or the computer store in Spiceland Mall. Call 444-3655 or contact 555-8867 or 414-4429. Secure your spot and celebrate with us.
See you at the Aficionados Hideaway Rooftop New Year's Eve for Flash, the premium all-inclusive old years to New Year celebration. A unique experience with superior fireworks displays at midnight. Hosted by Patrick the Hype Man, alongside DJ Kingpin, DJ Kareem, and Selecta Snappy. Admission regular tickets $500, or better still, enjoy premium ultra VIP lounge for $650 with Prosecco available all night long. Tickets available from Grenadian Optical and Go To Fet. December 31st, Old Year's Night, the Aficionados Hideaway Rooftop, all inclusive, with fireworks at midnight as we greet and say hello to 2025.
Get ready to dance the night away at the National Democratic Congress, New York chapter's highly anticipated White Christmas Dance on December 7th. Join us at the stunning Caribe Banquet Hall located on 1963 Utica Avenue for an unforgettable evening filled with your favorite Caribbean beats, joy, and a sense of community. This all-inclusive event is set to be the highlight of the holiday season, featuring 2 of the hottest DJs in town. Get ready for an epic showdown as the seasoned veteran Dr. Wax goes head-to-head with the smooth and stylish One Drop. But that's not all. Expect exciting attractions and surprises throughout the evening, along with a mouth-watering selection of exquisite Caribbean food and drinks to keep your spirits high. Tickets are $75, covering everything you need for an amazing night out. Whether you're celebrating with friends, making new connections, or simply enjoying a festive evening, the chapter's White Christmas Dance is the perfect way to celebrate the season. Don't miss this chance to celebrate the holidays with the NDC family. Purchase your tickets today and help us create a night to remember. Get your tickets now by visiting www.ndcnewyorkchapter.com or call 347-729-5770 or 347-693-6880. See you there.
I have some more questions, and I'd really like to get some ideas from you about your goals for your country, especially education.
Well, I mean, education is, in a sense, my pet, because, you know, for a small island with very little resources that could be exploited in any massive way that could create the sort of wealth, then the wealth really is your people, your population. And I think even for countries that have enormous resources, they are not going to be able to exploit those resources if the population doesn't have the knowledge and the capacity and the competence to exploit that. So it's, to me, a no-brainer to recognize that for a small country that doesn't have that, that essentially your wealth comes from investing in your people. It comes from your education system. It comes from your value system, because that's critical as well. It's not just education. It's ensuring that your citizens have the right value, that they understand that you have to work hard, that they understand you have to be patriotic, that they understand you have to not always make decisions that are purely about you, but also about the wider community and how it impacts all of us who live in the society, that we make decisions about sustainability. So, you know, I'm a living example of what education can do. And I think the more we recognize that, is the more we have the opportunity to empower the entire society and to shape how the country is going to look 20, 25, 30 years from that. So some of the things we've done almost immediately, and you see we started with a situation where the industrial climate between the teachers and the government was quite toxic, quite poisonous. And we immediately said, you know, we inherited the situation and we are satisfied that this was not created by the teachers. It was a simple case where, you know, the collective bargaining agreement had agreed that a certain percentage salary increases were to be paid. And honestly, outside of maliciousness, the government seemed to refuse to pay. and had teachers striking and walking up and down, and it created enormous disruption to the education system. And so immediately we said, look, the money's available, we will pay, and we paid. And that, I think, allowed us to start having a better industrial climate, so that we could sit with our teachers, with our unions, and talk through some of the challenges they faced, so that we can address them. So we were able to, in record time, sign a new collective bargaining agreement, which led to increases for salaries for all public servants, teachers, police officers, prison officers,
that was my next
etc.,
question.
and be able to create a better industrial climate. We faced a situation where our government had entered into a structural adjustment program with the IMF back in 2013, coming out of all of the economic challenges that we've had, the hurricane, some of the economic shocks that we received, the downturn in tourism, and so on. We got to a point where our debt was unsustainable. Our debt to GDP had become quite high. And so we had to do a lot of fiscal restructuring, pass new fiscal legislation, increase taxes, etc. But what the government essentially started doing was hiding the true size of the public service by having, in a sense, the established civil servants as one grouping, and then creating a vast grouping on all different types of contractual arrangements, from trainees to contract for services, contract of services, to unestablished workers, to workers with no documentation at all. And it has created an enormous challenge, because you essentially have two public services running side by side, which in totality is bloated. But obviously, for political reasons, you are giving jobs where perhaps there should be no need for a job. And so you are paying people very low wages, and you're almost, in a sense, killing their ambition, because you're giving them just enough to survive, and they have the fear that if they leave, they will not be able to get a job. And so it created this situation now where you have a lot of frustration within the public service, because you have workers who can't get a loan because you're giving them a contract for 1 year. So when they go to the bank says, well, you have no job security, and therefore I can't give you the loan. Right? So we've inherited all of this, and we are seeking to fix that. And all of these workers have no pension.
Oh my goodness.
So if they work for 10, 15, 20 years and they reach the retirement age, then they're walking away with nothing. So this is the kind of a challenge that we've created. So again, as part of addressing this, we are at the stage where we're going to be going to Parliament with a new draft pension bill to address all of these workers who currently don't have any pension system at all, so that we could address this. But so we've sought to address the industrial climate, and part of that also was the fact that the established workers, the government had not paid their pensions going back as far as 1984. So we fixed that as well. We paid retroactive pensions. We won the elections in June, and by November, we had paid over $75 million in retroactive pensions to those who were essentially retiring into poverty. So we did all of that to show, and you talked about in quoting the principles of leadership, that it's about serving people, and it's about putting people first. And in fact, that's our party's motto, putting people first. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of a country having money if the people in the country are impoverished? Right? So that's what we did. And so going back to education, we also did a number of things. We eliminated all of the miscellaneous school fees, which sometimes may seem small, but for a parent with 3 or 4 kids, adds up. We have ensured that at our tertiary level, TMI Community College and New Life Organization, which is the other main tertiary level technical and vocational skills institute, we've eliminated the tuition fees, so that students, when they finish high school, can go to these institutions without having to pay tuition fees. We have a number of other programs where we provide the school books, the uniforms, the tablets, to ensure that students can get to school. So we also have a free school meals program. There were, even if it was $1 or $5, that we've removed all of this to ensure that whatever little obstacles, financial obstacles that parents may struggle with, that may prevent their children having access to education, that we've eliminated that. There's still a lot more to go, because one of the issues is transportation costs. Our transportation system, there's no public transportation system. It's all private. It's all private bus owners and so on. And it's very expensive, so it's something we have to be able to address. So we're working on how we can start this. We're starting a school bus pilot in the beginning of the year to look at how we can ensure that our students get to and from school and the extracurricular activities at a reasonably affordable rate, so that parents don't have that challenge. So we see all of this as ensuring that we say to our people, the opportunities for educating yourselves are there, and we need curriculum reform, focus on digital skills, on the skill set that we know they are going to need now and in the future is also going to be critical. And reintroducing technical and vocational skills is also a major part of what we are seeking to do, because that's been one of the major failings of our education system. We've become very academic, very credentials-driven. People are doing 8, 9, 10, 15 subjects. But young men don't know how to change a light bulb, don't know how to change a tire, don't know anything about auto mechanics or refrigeration or plumbing, or and there's enormous shortage of capacity in the construction sector, for example, in the marine and yachting sector. So we are undergoing a complete review of the system, and we are going to be creating centers of excellence where we can focus to a large extent on the technical and vocational skills at a much earlier stage, because we think it's unfair to a student to have them go through this academic process until they're 18, only to then recognize that they're not interested, they're better with their hands, but we haven't given them the opportunity or the education set that will allow them at 12 or 13 to say, I want to be a plumber. And therefore, let me start focusing on the things that will make me a plumber or electrician at an early age, rather than going through the frustration of thinking, well, maybe I'm not bright or not as talented as someone else simply because my skill set is different. So that's one of the things that is very important to me, because what it has led to, particularly for young men, is a deep sense of frustration and poverty. It has led to, particularly for young men, is a deep sense of frustration and poverty, because they exit high school or T. Marshall Community College at 18, and they don't have any skills that would allow them to find jobs that pay them a half-decent wage. So many of them end up in the construction sector, but they're coming in with no skills at all related to the construction sector. So they start off as laborers, which means you're getting the lowest of the pay. It's back-breaking work, it's difficult work. And you could see the frustration oftentimes, and then they don't stick around long, or then they look at a more attractive, which oftentimes might be illicit activity, drugs, or those kinds of things, to try and get money quicker. Because they've already spent 18 years in school, and the school has not prepared them for the realities of the world of work and to the sectors where they can actually find better paying jobs. So that's one of the things that we're quite keen to address, because I'm sure just like in Bermuda and in many of the Caribbean islands, we do have an issue with violence and drugs amongst our young men. And it is something that we simply cannot not address by making sure we can ensure that they don't get into the situation, and that the pull factors are taken away by making sure that we pay attention to them from primary school, from secondary school, that we engage them, and then we really show them the opportunities that are available. But we have to provide the education system that nurtures that.
Well, as I listen to you, I hear a lot of similarities between Grenada and Bermuda. And one of the things I did when I tried to figure out, well, where is Grenada? What does it stand for? One of the things in terms of similarities is it's a small island, like Bermuda, 21 miles long, and then 12 miles wide. So you've got us by, at least times 12. You're at least that much bigger than Bermuda. But also that you attained independence in 1974, and that you're now looking to become, what did you say?
Republic.
A republic, right? I want you to talk a little bit about that. But before you do, also the capital of your country is St. George, and we have St. George. It used to be a capital in Bermuda. You have pastel houses. Now, this makes me want to go to Grenada, see what's going on. But I also want to go now because I want to see what you are doing with your country and how your country. So one of the questions is, how did the people feel when you took the government? Now, I know that because even though there were 51% of the population were for you, but that means there's a significant group of people who did not support you.
That's
My
right.
math is like 49, but anyway. So
We're about service.
That's right.
That genuinely we are about trying to help. The policy may not be right. There might be missteps. The implementation may not be the way you want it to be. But I think people know that we're not there to think about ourselves, or to think that having given us the leadership of the country, that somehow we think we're better than people, that we snobbish, that we're not making ourselves accessible, we're not responsive. So I think certainly that is been overwhelming. And I think a lot of the things that we said we will do, we've done it, and done it in record time. And one of the reasons for pursuing that level of aggressiveness was to ensure that people started to believe again in politicians and in the system. Because you see, when you make promises that you never keep, people lose faith. And if they lose faith in the leadership, then they begin to lose faith in themselves, and they lose faith in the system, and then they lose faith in the country, right? And therefore you end up with a period where there will be no growth. People either want to leave, or then they turn to, as I said, other means of trying to survive. And you have to make sure, therefore, that if you do make commitments, that you're able to deliver on them, and that you also make commitments that are realistic. right? So there's no point in promising the world if you know you can't deliver. And if you've made commitments and for some reason you can't deliver, that you're able to go back to the people early enough and say, we said we were going to do this. These are the challenges we've encountered, and hence we think why we may need to change. And I think that's one of the things that's, for me, is very important, that we keep the scorecard where we can say categorically, we said we would deliver those things, we've delivered them. These are the outstanding ones. These are the likely time frames that it will take. This is what it will involve. Because obviously, Grenada has been an independent country for 50 years. We've had some turbulent political challenges. I think we've managed to settle that, and we're a stable democracy. The rule of law is very important. We've got an independent judiciary that is part of the OECS regional system. We obviously have to find ways to ensure that we can treat with the threat of climate change. We've been hit by hurricanes in 2004 and 2005. Then we had one this year. Over the last 2 days, we've had severe flash floodings, landslides, etc. So that is also a major challenge that we have to be able to cope with, and to make sure that our citizens are always prepared for those sort of issues. But I think ensuring that we recognize that our size doesn't have to determine our destiny is critical.
I love it.
That's one of the things and that's why investing in our people is important. And if you look at the Caribbean as a whole, including Bermuda, that's clear. We punch way above our weight on the global stage in almost any aspects, whether it's politics, whether it's political stability, whether it's being able to find creative ways to support our people in terms of, you have perfect examples here, your reinsurance and your captive insurance, whether it's in tourism, whether it's in the music, whether it's in the sport that we've created throughout the region. We have amazing things that we can celebrate. And, I was in Azerbaijan for COP prior to coming here, and I was in a restaurant, and there was someone singing, and I was there with the Prime Minister of the Bahamas and some of his colleagues, and I was laughing. We were laughing because I said we're the only people in a room full of 200 people who have rhythm and who appreciate the music and the culture, because we were the only ones clapping when the person was singing. And I said that's the difference of a Caribbean culture. We would not have someone sing and not encourage them, even if the music was terrible. Right. We'd support them, we'd encourage them. And in a sense, those are little things that sometimes we take for granted. But in the context of the planet and the world, we have a lot to share with the world. And so it's important for us to be proud of our civilization. I call it the Caribbean civilization. Tolerance. Look at Bermuda. You could meet almost every ethnicity here.
Right.
All right. You don't have the racism that to deal with. You have the intolerance. You don't have the violence based on ethnicity or race or that sort of thing. And those are important lessons that I think we can share with the world. You go to Trinidad, you go to Guyana, you see people, whether they're Chinese, Indian, black, you have Muslim, Christian, and those are things that I think the Caribbean needs to own a bit more, to shout about more, and to be able to teach the world about more. So for me, the Caribbean civilization, I think, is critical. And we also have to do a better job of making sure that we learn more about each other. That the Northern Caribbean learns more about the Southern Caribbean and in between. Because I think if we do more of that, we'll come to appreciate how truly magnificent we've been able to create a civilization despite all of the odds that we've had to face.
So tell me about taking your country from independence now to a republic.
Yes. Well, I think, one of the things about governance is that I think we have to constantly evaluate whether it's working for us. And obviously we come from a system where we were a colony of the United Kingdom. And so obviously your pattern of government has been patterned after that. Right. But we're a small society. The UK is, 60, 70, 80 million people. And we're not. And so if you have government that is, in my view, cumbersome and expensive, we have to ask ourselves, as a small country, should we continue paying for this? So I'm actually taking this from a very practical perspective. We have the Office of the Governor General. I love our Governor General. It's nothing personal against her. It's just an office that she's been able to hold. But the question is, we have the Office of the Governor General, which we have to pay for and finance. Mm-hmm. You have the Office of the Prime Minister, which you have to pay for and finance. You have the Parliament, which you have to pay for and finance. And in our case, it's a bicameral Parliament. You've got both the lower house and the upper house. And then you have an enormous government apparatus that you have to pay for. And we have to constantly ask ourselves, what percentage of our GDP goes to simply maintaining the government? And is the government delivering services that are beneficial to the public? And so to me, from an effective and efficiency point of view, I don't see that having an office of the Governor General actually does that, because it's largely ceremonial. It's very expensive to maintain, and it doesn't really provide any services, so to speak, to the citizens. And the cost of maintaining that could probably maintain an entire school for the year. So for me, it's a very practical perspective. And then the second perspective, I think, is, I fundamentally believe in democracy and elective politics. And I really think whoever becomes the head of the country, head of the government, head of the state, should really be one person that the public has picked based on you presenting your case and based on the public knowing that you are going to have to come back to them every 4 or 5 years to be validated. And if they're not satisfied, then they give someone else the opportunity.
Right.
And so to me, to have a governance system where you have someone who sits on top of everyone else, who's not in any way, shape or form elected by the public, in my view, is fundamentally undemocratic. And essentially you are saying that
you are awesome.
it is fundamentally undemocratic. So in a sense, there's a hypocrisy within our system. But I understand it, because if you look at the history of the Westminster system,
Yes.
they came from a kingdom. They came
Right.
from a fundamentally undemocratic a system, and it took, in a sense, the Cromwell Revolution to start chipping away at that system to say, no, the average Brit should have a say in who runs the country. And so the compromise was to find a system where you kept the king or the queen as head of state, but you divest, so to speak, the executive power into the office of the prime minister and the cabinet. But the UK could probably afford that. I don't think small islands could really afford that. And so places like Barbados have gone to republicanism, but it's not the form that I would support, because essentially they've changed the name in my view, but they've maintained the same structure, because you still have now a president and you have a prime minister, and the president is still largely ceremonial, and you still have to pay for all of this and maintain it. And I really don't see why you need to do that in a small country. If ever, I think what we would need is perhaps more local government, because part of the challenge in Grenada, for example, is that with an MP system and a cabinet system at the community level, at the village levels, we don't have the ability to respond as quickly and as efficiently to the issues that people raise in their communities. And that is where, to me, there should be greater emphasis and greater deployment of resources. So you take it up from the top, a top-heavy system, and you put it at the grassroots level, which then empowers our community and empowers community leadership, and actually gives you the opportunity to have better leaders ultimately in the long run, because it means young people can get involved in social community activities and volunteers, because you're providing resources to them. You can have better persons who then understand democracy, understand politics, and therefore come out wanting to serve, because they view it as a positive thing. So that's the sort of rearranging of the governance structure that ultimately I'd like to see.
Well, people, those of you who are going to the gala tonight at Hamilton Princess, 6 o'clock is cocktails and 7 o'clock is the actual event, black tie. And you'll get the opportunity to hear the Prime Minister of Grenada, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, to speak. He's the keynote tonight. And I know the lines did light up a little bit. I apologize. He was in the middle of speaking and I didn't want to interrupt him. And time is so precious because he's only with us for a short time and I still have some questions. But in terms of the makeup of your country, we talked about Bermuda and the similarities between, and we have a cultural mix kind of thing. But I noticed that you say that 82%, am I correct? 82% of your population is African,
yes.
And there's only 7% of the population who identify as white, although we know there's no white and black,
Yes.
And then 13% is mixed,
yes.
Right? So can you tell us a little bit about that? How does that, well, I guess that would not interfere with how you're perceived in running the government.
No, I think, I think Grenada is blessed in that issues of, I call it colorism and race,
Right.
Do not feature at all. Politics, socioeconomic system, and I'm very, very happy for that. We have a significant tourism sector, and obviously a significant portion of tourists are non-black. Mm-hmm. We don't have any issues arising from that. Many of the owners of our hotels are in fact indigenous and Grenadian as well, and black. So we've been very fortunate that I think that over the last 50 years or so, coming out of our period of independence, that we've been able to let merit be the determinative factor rather than people's ethnicity or their skin color. I think like any colonial society would have gone through a period where those things obviously had to be worked out and ironed out. And I think we've been fortunate enough to be able to address it. I think if you have any challenge, it's probably a class challenge based on economic status.
Right.
And that's why it's crucial for us to ensure that we give as many persons, especially the less fortunate, the opportunity to empower themselves, and through ensuring you have the right education policies, the right opportunities, and as I said, the right merit-based system, so that people don't feel that there's some glass ceiling that they can't crack. And I think for me, I use myself as a perfect example. If you had probably told the society 40 years ago that I would become the Prime Minister, they probably would have said no.
Even 5 years ago.
Exactly. and now I am the Prime Minister. So I think that clearly shows that we are a merit-based society, and that if you give persons the opportunity and they take it, that the public would reward them. And so that should not just be for politics, but certainly for economic empowerment as well. And so to that extent, I think we've been lucky. And that's what I mean when I say, I always tease, but I mean it in a serious way, that I think the Caribbean should play a more meaningful role in ensuring that when persons in other parts of the world are fighting and engaging in war, having tough times diplomatically, that we offer them the Caribbean to come and to talk about the differences in the Caribbean and to show them how much better we are off because we are tolerant and because we are inclusive, and that what we're seeking to do is get the best of humanity rather than the worst. So in that sense, I think Grenada has been fortunate in that regard. So it's not an issue at all.
Praise the Lord. You've been listening to The Need to Lead on Magic 102.7 with me, your host, Shangri-La Durham-Thompson, and we've been talking to the Prime Minister, or we still are talking to the Prime Minister of Grenada, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell. The phones did light up, and I'm going to give people an opportunity to call in for maybe the next couple of minutes. The number to call is 297-1027, and if you're overseas, 888-257-9086. And so, just so that you know, in case someone calls in the middle of your talking, and I try to, because we want to take a phone call, okay? But as a servant leader, according to Brent McHugh, servant leadership empowering others to accomplish, he says that, as I said, those 6 things: leaders must listen well, value people, call it like they see it, ask powerful questions. And the phone is ringing. Good morning, Magic 102.7. You're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Miss Thompson. Good morning, Prime Minister. Pleasure hearing you. Pleasure hearing you and what you've said there, Prime Minister.
Okay, 1 second. We have one second. We have a little glitch here. Can you come this way? I'm sorry. Hello. Okay, so ask your question.
Yes. Okay. 1, do your country take in corporate tax? And number 2, do the Chinese invest in your country?
Okay. He is going to answer in 1 second. Corporate tax, and do the Chinese invest in your country?
Right. So we do have corporate tax. We've got a corporate tax rate of 28%. And yes, the Chinese do invest in our country. We have diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China. And so you have private Chinese investors who are investing. And then the government has economic cooperation agreements with the People's Republic of China as well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you there. We're possibly getting into the international corporate tax sometimes by the 1st of January, and maybe we can learn how you guys do it for our benefit as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, and I do see the lines lighting up, and we do have to let the Prime Minister get out of here, I guess. And I have a funeral to go to. So, but I did talk about those 6 things: listening well, valuing people, calling it as you see it, asking powerful questions. Which of those actually resonate with you most?
I think empowering people and communication, because I think, and they're probably the difficult ones to do. But communication, I think, is critical, and it's not you speaking, because if you're not listening, and that's one of the things that have been identified, then you really don't know for sure whether what you are saying is getting through to people or what people are saying to you is getting through to you. So I think understanding communication, being patient, and making sure that you truly listen, because there's this famous saying that, sometimes it's not what's said, but it's what unsaid that is critical, and that requires you to listen, because people may tell you something, but in the telling you, they're not telling you something. And that not telling oftentimes is critical. And from a leadership perspective, recognizing that it really is about empowering and supporting others. And that's the only way you can be successful is critical. Too often we make it about ourselves rather than about the people around us, and supporting and nurturing and encouraging persons. Because at the end of the day, no individual is successful without a team that is prepared to support and nurture that person and encourage that person and build that person. And in return, we have to be able to do that as well.
Thank you. Good morning, Magic 102.7. You're on the air. Do you have a question?
Good morning, Dr. Shangela Durham.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to ask the gentleman from Grenada, what would he take from Bermuda, our environment, our economy, and what would he advise Bermuda about his environment and economy? That's my question right there.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question, and thank you for asking it. I think what I would take from Bermuda is the fact that I think Bermuda has been able to make some decisions which clearly were difficult, but was in the best interest of Bermuda from a sustainability perspective. So let's take your decision to historically limit the numbers of tourists that you had. And you can see that play out today in other parts of the world, like the Mediterranean, for example. And Deputy Premier and I was just having this conversation, that as small islands, we have to think about the long-term sustainability of our islands and our environment and what we can and can't handle, and not allow ourselves, merely because someone may say they have money or they're coming to invest, to let that be the determinative factor as to whether or not we say yes or no, or whether we change our own rules. And I think that's critical, because we have to preserve our islands, not just for us, but for the next generation of Bermudans. And that's critical. So whether it's the number of vehicles on your road, for example, and being able to create that limit, that is something we've not been able to do in Grenada. And I think partly just because of the political pressure, the fear that if you implement an unpopular, what appears to be unpopular decision, but which we clearly know is in the best interest of the country in the long run, that you lose office because people will vote you out. So ensuring that we can educate the public, explain in a transparent manner why it is absolutely necessary sometimes to take what appears to be difficult decisions, but decisions that are in the best interest of the people and the country, particularly from an environmental sustainability in the long run. I think that is absolutely critical for us. I mean, obviously, in terms of what I think Grenada can offer, I've talked about the fact that we really don't have a color or race issue, and that we're very tolerant. And I think, in my view, we can look at why that is the case in Grenada. What are the things we can do to encourage and make sure that that remains the case in Bermuda as well? That would be one of the things that I would want to perhaps encourage or leave with Bermudans, that at the end of the day, we all have to make sure that we live together, and that we are as inclusive as possible to make sure that you have the unity that you need to continue going forward.
Okay, and my final question to you would be, what would you like to say to Bermuda that could make a difference in our lives? Now, that's probably a kind of unfair question, yes, because you haven't been here that long, but you have some kind of relationship with the people that you've met, yes, like this brother right here who's just come in. and you've been talking to him. But what would you like to say to Bermuda that could make a difference in our lives?
I think I'd take it from a regional perspective. I think we need to really learn more about each other within the Caribbean, support each other and work closer together. I think if we do that, there are tremendous opportunities for us just intra-regionally in terms of addressing some of the challenges that we would face. So for me, I think that is critical, and that's why I'm here. And again, I want to take the opportunity to thank the Premier and the Deputy Premier for having me here, because I think they offered this invitation last year and I wasn't able to make it. And it was quite difficult getting here simply because of my own travel schedule. But I really wanted to make sure that I accepted the invitation and I was here, because I think it shows, if the leaders show the commitment to work closer together, to support each other, then it will trickle down to the average citizen. So I think that is one of the critical things I would certainly say. We have more in common, and we need to reinforce and support each other.
Well, God is good. To have you here today has been a real blessing. You have blessed me, and I know you've blessed our listeners. Now, this gentleman that's come in to leave me with an ad, I guess it would be. I'm going to let you do the ad yourself, because I think it will make great sense coming from you.
Good morning, listeners. This is Walter Urban, Deputy Premier of Bermuda, here with Dr. Shangri-La Durham Thompson and the Honorable Dickon Mitchell from Grenada. Happy to be allowed to speak with you for a brief moment. I just want to let you know we still have a few tickets left for tonight. Go on to GPass and you can purchase the tickets. They are $150. There are a few spaces left for you who would like to come and hear more from the Prime Minister and have a night of gala experience. Go online and see if you can pick up a few of those last few tickets.
gpass.bm.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
And thank you for bringing our honored guest with us today. This is, as I said, has been a real blessing. Would you like to say something to him on air that the listening audience will value?
Thank you. An honor to be allowed to be on your airways, Dr. Shangri-La Durham-Thompson. I met the Prime Minister not long after he became leader at CARICOM. And as he said, he does represent the next generation and the current promising generation of leadership for the region. He is also the chairman of CARICOM at the moment, and I can say that I have sat in meetings with him, and as you can appreciate, we have some extremely powerful leadership in the region, such as the likes of Prime Minister Mia Mottley and Prime Minister Raul Gonzalez, who are dynamic, strong personalities, and I've seen the Prime Minister manage them. And I'm like, he's smiling because he knows that word manage is a very interesting word in the Caribbean. But I've seen him manage the meetings with them and with the issues that they raise, and he has done an excellent job as chairman so far, and I have attended meetings where he's been in his role, and he's just an example of the strong, capable leadership that the Caribbean continues to provide, and certainly the future that Bermuda seeks to continue to be a part of.
Thank you so much. God bless you. You are refreshing.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have had you here today. And I know, and I apologize, listeners, but I do have a funeral that I have to get to. So I'm going to ask if you would like to say anything, any last words that you'd like for the listeners to remember from this interview.
Well, I certainly want to thank you for having me on. I completely enjoyed our conversation. And, I look forward to coming back to Bermuda. As I said, I think we owe it to each other to learn more about each other, about our journey, about where we want to get to in the future, what are the common challenges we face, and how we can find common solutions to that. But above all, to make sure that we continue to put God first, continue to allow Him to bless us and bless our people and our civilization. And I will repeat, the Caribbean is a great civilization. We have accomplished amazing things despite the odds, and we should never forget that. And we should continue inspiring each other and inspiring the next generation of Bermudans, Grenadians to work together and to just continue to fight for this beautiful part of the planet. Thank you.
And make sure that when you come back, you tell them that you have to come back on the Need to Lead.
Yes.
Because our listeners would love to hear from you. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day. This has been the Need to Lead. God bless you and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you for being part of the Heartbeat today, and join us again next Sunday when we'd have other equally interesting interviews and information to share with you. Have a great Sunday afternoon.